Well, hello everyone. My name is Audrey Codner, and I'm the owner of Math by Audrey. Sorry, had some difficulties, but we are here, right here, and now. So, what I'm planning on doing is breaking down the concepts of word problems. Usually, a lot of people, when it comes to this, they freak out. When they see a word problem, they generally don't do anything. So, I'm here to alleviate some of that stress, some of that pressure from you. And so, when you do see a word problem, maybe in your algebra class, maybe on assessment, maybe your GED, your ASVAB, your Accuplacer, TEAS test, HESI test, SAT, ACT. Now you're not going to freak out. So we're going to do a total of 5 problems, and we're going to break it down step by step. So the first problem, it says the sum of two consecutive integers is 73. What are the two integers? So you can do this one of two ways. You know that when they say the word sum, that means addition. So I'm looking at two numbers, consecutive. Now, consecutive means one after the other. So if I say 1 and 2, I could say 30 and 31. I could say 50 and 51. Those are two consecutive integers, one after the other. But those two integers have to equal the 73. So we can do one of two ways. You can probably, if you are allowed to use a calculator, you can probably take that 73 and start guessing, right? So you say 73. Let me see if I can make this a lot brighter. There we go. If I said 73 minus, I don't know, obviously 63. When I look at 63 and I look at 10, they're not consecutive. They're nowhere close. So this, since there's a huge span, means I need to pick a number way less than 63. So if I say 73 and I don't know, 25, okay, 25, 48, there is a difference between. So that means since this number, my answer is larger than the number that I chose, that means I need to take an answer that is bigger than 25, but less than 48. So if I say 73 minus 39, ooh, look at that. So I have 39 and 34. So since this number is bigger than this number, it has to be a little bit larger than 34, but lower than 39. So let's see, 73 minus 38. Okay, getting us closer. Before we had a difference of 5, now we have a difference of 3. So let's try the next one. Okay, so we have that. So it has to be lower. So 73 minus 37. Ah, so now we got 37 and we have 36. So we have those two consecutive numbers. But look at it. We just, 1 second. This is what happens when we go live. The trials and tribulations of being live. Anywho, so we have 37 and 36. So they're consecutive, if you think about it. So we could do what's called a guess and check. But that's only if you had a calculator. But what happens if you can't have a calculator during that testing session? We can't just keep randomly doing that. And plus, that took a lot of time. Okay. So we don't want to use anything that's going to take a lot of time. So what we can do is look at it algebraic. So when we look at it algebraically, we have the sum of two consecutives. So in order for it to be consecutive, in order for me to get from 36 to 37, I had to add 1. So I have a starting number, which is going to be my x. and plus the next number, which is represented by x plus 1. And they're saying the sum of these two numbers, this is going to be my first number. In order for me to get to the next number, I have to take the original plus 1 to get to the second number. And they're saying that the sum of that equals 73. So algebraically, the goal is when you're solving an equation is to get x by itself. So x plus x gives me 2x plus 1 equals 73. So now I want to subtract 1 from both sides. So I have 2x is equal to 72. So we're trying to get x by itself. So what do? I need to divide both sides by 2. So how many 2's can go into 7 without going over? That gives me 3 with a remainder of 1. Once I bring down this 2, it's a 12. How many 2's can go into 12? That would be 6. So that means the first number that we have is going to be 36. That represented the x. So in order for me to find the second number, I have to add 1 to the original x, which is now 36, which gives me 37. So a little bit quicker than the guessing and checking, but I know for a lot of you guys, this is where your comfort zone is. But if you are going to take a test that does not allow calculators or only allows calculators on certain problems, you're going to have to practice a little bit with the algebra. So for the next one, seems a very popular one, especially for those that are taking the ASVAB. So we have two cars leaving the same location at the same time, traveling opposite directions. So we got one that's traveling 55 miles per hour, and the other travels 65 miles per hour. So it asks, after how many hours will there be 360 miles apart? So this reminds me of your distance, rate, and time. So if you notice right here, I have this formula. So your D is representing your distance, your R is your speed or your rate, and your time is usually your time in hours. Okay? So when you see the rate, anytime they talk about miles per hour, that's going to represent your rate. Okay? And your time is going to be the hours, the distance will be your miles. So there's two different cars. So they're going at two different rates. So in order for us to know when they're traveling at the same direction, same traveling, but opposite directions, okay? But they're leaving at the same location. So instead of looking at their rates as two separate entities, why not combine them? So you have your 55 plus your 65. Since they're leaving from the same spot, yeah, they're going in different directions, but they want to know how many hours will they both be at 360. So if they're going to be both 360 miles apart, let's combine those rates so we can figure out what our hours are going to be. So you have 5 plus 5, that gives me 10, carry the 1. So 5 plus 6 is 11 plus 1 is 12. So we have 120. So 120 what? 120 miles per hour. That's going to be your rate. So this is when my lovely little triangle is going to help me out to figure out if I'm going to multiply or divide. If we're looking for distance, we're going to multiply the rate and the time. If we're looking for our rate or our speed, we're going to divide the distance and the time. But if we're looking for our time in hours, we're going to divide the distance and the rate. So we are looking for how many hours. Okay, how many hours? So that means we're looking for the time. So that means we're doing our time is equal to our distance over our rate. And the distance is 360 miles. And our rate is going to be that 120 miles per hour. So take a look what happens. We have miles divided by miles. Boom. What's left is your hours. So now we have 360 divided by 120. They both end in 0. So instead of trying to tackle a largest number, we're going to get rid of the zeros. So you actually have 36 divided by 12. That's more manageable. So how many 12s can go into 36? Exactly 3. And then how long will it take those vehicles to be 360 miles apart? About 3 hours. Okay? So we're just taking this all step by step. So we're looking at what they're giving us. The one thing that happens a lot when it comes to word problems is when we do the word problems, we read it like it's a whole novel. And it's not a whole novel. It's just basically looking at your question. We talked about hours, we talked about miles. We're seeing miles per hour in both of the vehicles, so add those two up. So now you only have one to work with. Now that we have our triangle, we have our rates, we have our distance, we need to find our time. So we divide the distance and the rate. Okay? So whatever you're looking for, you cover up. So it tells you, what are you going to do? Are you going to divide or are you going to multiply? All right. So besides distance, rate, and times, and some of the consecutive integers, we also have system of equations, or we can solve it with one term. So here I have the same question being taken 2 different times, right? But I'm going to do it 2 ways, and you can figure out which way is going to be best for you. So let's look at this first. So we have a concert sold 250 tickets. The adult tickets cost $18 and the student tickets cost $12. Okay, so what are we looking for? We are looking for how many adult tickets and how many student tickets were sold. So most people will say, all right, well, we got 2 things going on here, which is not incorrect. But we're going to have 2 equations, maybe or maybe not. Let me show you one way, and then I can show you another way. So one way is I'm going to represent X for my first tickets, which is my adult tickets. And if the total number of tickets were sold is 250 tickets, that means for the student tickets, whatever answer I get, that has to be 250 minus how many adult tickets that I get. Because if we have a total of 250, I would subtract how many I have for the adults to figure out the student tickets. So why not set it up like this? Okay, so this is just one way. So for us to solve this, they told us that the adult tickets are $18 each, right? And the student tickets are $12. And the amount total that was collected was $3,900. So if I know I'm paying $18 per ticket and I don't know how many adult tickets I have, that's going to be represented as 18x because I'm multiplying 18 to every ticket that I sold. Now, since it is the total amount, that means we're going to add. Now, what are we adding? We're going to figure out the student tickets. So I know the cost of the student tickets are $12. So if 250 minus X is supposed to represent the student tickets, I'm going to do 12 times that expression. So what is this equation going to equal? 3,900. Okay. So the X is representing the adult tickets. If I was going to do the student tickets, I'll take the 250 minus how many adult tickets I sold. So since we're dealing with the cost, we're dealing with the money. So notice here for this equation, we're going to be solving for X because that's the only variable that they're using. Okay. So let's take a gander. So now we're going to, as soon as I can get myself a little sip of paper, now we're going to focus our attention onto the equation. So first thing I would do is do the distributive property. So you still have your 18x, bring down your plus sign. So now 12 times that 250. So we got with our 3,000 minus 12 times x, that gives us a 12x equals 3,900. Okay, so all we did was distribute from one to the next. So combining like terms. So we have 8x minus 12x. Since they're both on the same side of the equal sign, we can go ahead and combine those. But that means we're saying the x's are going to stay on the left-hand side. But with the 3,000, we're going to subtract that because I want all my constants to be on one side and all my x's to be on the opposite side. So 3,900 minus 3,000, that gives us 900. So 18x minus 12x, that gives us 6x. So once that's done, you have your 6x equal 900. So that means we're going to divide both sides by 6. So how many 6's go into 9? Just 1, which gives a remainder of 3. Bring down the 0 is 30. How many 6's can go into 30? That's 5. And then we have a 0 remaining. So how many 6's can go into 0? That would be 0. So we have x is equal to 150. Well, what does that mean? Going back to our key, that will tell us what that means. So that means we have 150 adult tickets. So if there's 150 adult tickets, In order for us to find the student tickets, we're going to take our 250 minus the 150 that we found for adults, and that gives us our 100. And this is our student tickets. So that's how many student and how many adult tickets they are. Okay. So again, this is just one way of doing it. Now, if it got too intense because of this part here, that 250 minus X to get your student tickets, what we could do is have variables representing the adult and the student. This is why I wrote this out, or I copied it twice, because now you got a choice. So, same scenario, but we're going to do it differently. So again, we can say the X is going to represent the adult tickets. And I'm going to say the Y is going to represent the students. So let's slide over here so we can focus our attention on this one. All right. So we're going to have two equations. If we do it this way, this is called a system of equations. So if we take a look, we have tickets and we have money. So we should have an equation that deals with the tickets. And then we're going to have an equation that deals with just the money. So the equation dealing with the tickets is the adult tickets plus the student tickets. And it's going to equal the total number of tickets that they collected, which is 250. The second equation is going to deal with the money. So we're looking at adult tickets, like they said, $18 for the adult tickets. So that's 18x plus $12 for the student tickets. That's 12y. And it's going to equal our total of 3,900. So now we have these two equations. In order for you to cancel anything out, they have to have the same variables, different signage, but the same numbers. So you can take their time and take a look at which one do you think will be best to do. It doesn't matter. So you can actually just go ahead and just see what we can do. So what I would like to do is I'm going to take this top equation and I want to get rid of my y's first. Okay. So if I want to get rid of my y's, I need for the number, the coefficient in front of this y to be a negative 12. In order for me to make it into a negative 12 through multiplication, I need to multiply everything by negative 12. So that means I'm going to have negative 12x minus 12y equals negative 3,000. And then the numbers underneath, I have my 18x plus 12y equals 3,900. From here, I'm going to add these two equations together because that's the only way I can get a negative 12 and a positive 12 to cancel out to give me 0. So since they do cancel out to give me 0, I don't need that 0 as a placeholder because I still have this negative 12x and 18x to combine, and they stay on that same left-hand side. So that gives me a 6x, and this is 900. Okay, that sounds familiar. Divide both sides by 6. So now you have your x equals, how many 6 go into 9? That's 1. And we have 50. That sounds familiar because that's exactly what we got from the other side. Okay. But now that is representing your adult tickets. So for us to find the student tickets, one of the two things you could do is take this 150, go back to one of the two original equations before we modified to see what your other tickets are. Or since you know the total is going to be 250 and you know 150 are going to be adult tickets, just subtract the two. So you have 250 minus your 150, which was the adult tickets. That will give you your 100 for the student tickets. Okay? So you can approach this one of two ways. And as you get questions, go ahead and ask your questions as we go through it. Because the way that I'm approaching the lives here on YouTube is just me getting some problems, go ahead and work it through. But if you have questions, go ahead and put it into the chat. Okay? You should be able to. All right? So that's how we approach it. You got one of two. You can either make it into like one expression, or you can do it as a system of equations. Okay? So let's try another. So we're going to focus on this number 4. So at a school event, 180 tickets were sold. Students' tickets cost $5, and the adult tickets cost $8. A total of $1,170 was collected. How many student tickets and adult tickets were sold? So when they're asking for 2, we're looking at a system. We're comparing 2 different variables. Now, we can solve it based off of time. We can solve it as a system, or we can solve it as a one term. Now, my suggestion, although we're used to the system, we can go ahead and do the system. But sometimes the one term is a little more advanced, but it's a little less time consuming once you know how to set things up. So I'll hook it up for you. So first off, we know that there's students, then there's adults. Since students is the first thing that come up, I'm going to have students be my X value. I just like to see what comes first. Now, for my adult tickets, if I know I collected 180 tickets total, so once I find my student tickets, all I have to do to find the adult tickets is take 180 and subtract from the student tickets that we found. That's how you will find the adult tickets. So now to set up my equation, we're taking the cost. So basically, we're taking these two equations and merging them into one equation. That's what we're doing that's different from the system of equations. So we're taking the price. So the price for the students is $5. So that will be my 5x. we're taking the price of the adult tickets, which is $8. So I'm multiplying 8 with this 180 minus X. And since this is a total of 1,170, we're going to add those two together. And that's what it's going to be. Okay. So, first thing that I would tackle is the distributive property. So we're going to take this 8 and distribute to everything inside of this parenthesis. So my 5x comes down, my plus comes down, 8 times 180 gives me 1,440 minus my 8x, and it's going to equal 1,170. 1,170. All right, so we did that distribution. So now you have x's on the same side of the equal sign. So we can combine 5x with negative 8x. You're probably saying, well, that's a minus sign. Once we start going into solving mode, this is considered a negative. So if you have negative 8 and a positive 5, if someone owed you $8 and they paid you 5, that means they owe you $3. Bring down plus 1,440 equals 1,170. So we're trying to get x by itself. So what do? We're going to subtract the 1,440 on both sides. Now, since 1,440 is larger than 1,170, that means I'm going to have a negative answer over here, which is going to make sense. Because if I bring down my negative 3x, I know that this is going to be a negative. And we actually got negative 270. Okay. All right. So if someone owed you $1,440, which is a lot for a person to owe, and they only paid you 1,170, you're short. And how much are you short? You're short 270. So now what do we do on both sides? We divide both sides by negative 3. So negative 3 divided by negative 3, that will give me my x. And then negative divided by negative is a positive. And 270 divided by 3. I know that 27 divided by 3 is 9. And then how many 3's can go into 0? 0. So we have x equals 90. But what does that mean? So we go back to our key. 90 what? 90 student tickets. So in order for us to figure out how many adult tickets there were, we have to take the total number of tickets that they were talking about, which is 180, and subtract by the number of student tickets that we got, which is 90. So we have 180 minus 90. So that means there were 90 adult tickets. And we answered the question. And the question asked how many student tickets and how many adult tickets were sold. 90 each. Okay. All right. So we have one more left. And again, if you like these and you like the practice, Remember, if you take a look at the link in my bio, Stand Store at Math by Audrey, you will actually see a link to my Stand Store where you can peruse and find even a free math check just to see where you are mathematically. And also, you can look at all of my Algebra at Your Pace, that 10-book series, which generally helps people to succeed and to increase their score on the GED, the ASVAB, the Accuplacer, and the TEAS test. Okay? So it hits on a lot of these mathematical concepts. So, number 5, a rectangle has a perimeter of 74 feet. The length is 9 feet more than its width. Find the dimensions of the rectangle. So, how are we going to approach this? One, what is a rectangle? Let's draw it out. Why not? So we have a rectangle. It has two congruent sides. And this is the reason why I love my book that I made. Okay. So you got the length, how long it is 9 feet more than its width. So we don't know the width. So I'm going to say W is going to equal my width because they didn't give me anything for width. So that's a W here and that's a W here. How wide? But the length is 9 feet more than its width. More than is the words or the phrase that's used to represent addition. So since it's 9 feet more than the width, it's going to be your W plus 9. So that's going to be your length. Okay, so you have your length times your width. So now they give us a little extra piece. Now we know the length, we know the width, but they're telling us that this rectangle has a perimeter of 74. Perimeter has the word rim in it. Because it has the word rim in it, that means that's the outside. If we add up all 4 sides, it should equal 74 feet. So some people can actually write it out as width plus 9 plus width plus 9 equals 74. Okay, so if you add up all the sides, you can write it out as this extended form, or since you know that these 2 sides are going to be the same length, or the same measurement, excuse me, and we know that these 2 sides are going to be the same measurement, you can write it out as this: 2 times your length, which is W plus 9, plus 2 times your width, which is W, is going to equal 74. Okay, so you can write it out as an extended version, or you can write it out as its condensed version. So here, we will just have to do distributive property. So when you distribute, you have 2 times W and 2 times 9. So 2 times W gives me 2W, plus 2 times 9 gives me 18, plus 2 times W, which gives us 2W, and it's going to equal 74. Okay, so sometimes you might have to draw a picture so you can see it. We're very visual when we're trying to break down concepts. So what we're doing here, let's focus up. Instead of getting distracted by everything else, let's just cover up and focus on what we need to focus on. We need to solve this equation for W. So this is one mistake that a lot of people generally make. They think that I have to subtract the 2W on the other side. If the variables are on the same side as the equal sign, because you see the equal sign is right here. If they're on the same side, go ahead and combine them. You got 2W and 2W. So that gives us 4W. Bring down your plus 18 equals your 74. Okay, now we could subtract the 18 on both sides. Because what's the goal? We're trying to isolate our variable, our W. So now we have 4W, that's going to come down because positive 18 and negative 18 gives me 0, and I don't need that 0 as a placeholder. Equals, now we have our 74 minus our 18, that gives us our 56. Okay, bring down to the focus of our eyes. So we want to get W by itself. 4W is the same as 4 times W. And the inverse or the opposite of multiplication is division. So we have our W equals, how many 4s can go into 5? Well, that's 1. With a remainder of 1, so now it's a 16. How many 4s can go into 16? That's exactly 4. So our W is equal to 14. 14 what? Always got to put the measurements. So we're doing everything in feet, because sometimes they switch up items. So that means our width is 14 feet. Okay, that's 1. But we're not done. What do they want? They want us to find the dimensions of the rectangle. So they want you to find the length and the width. So we know the width is 14. Now we need to find the length. And remember what they said the length is? The length is 9 feet more than its width. So that's that W plus 9. So if we're looking at our length, our W, which is 14, plus 9. So 14 plus 9, that gives us 23. And 23 what? 23 feet. Now, the way that you write the dimensions of a rectangle, it's always your length times your width. So our length is 23, and our width is 14. And that is your answer. Some people like to put a little X in between, but sometimes people put the X's and they think it's a variable and it gets crazy. But that's what you're looking for. So you got your dimensions of your length is 23, the dimension of your width is 14. Okay? So that's basically it. We're taking things step by step, looking at how you look at word problems. So when you're faced with a word problem, regardless of the test, it's not an immediate freak out. It's getting to know terminology and what exactly is happening with the numbers. It gets to know maybe even some of a formula, like a little cheat or, a little helper, okay? That's generally not given in most exams. But it's also taking a look at what are you looking for? So this one, you had 2 different ways of getting the same answers. So you could already do the setup and have it labeled as the students, or you can do the whole thing of system of equations. Okay, and then lastly, another system of equations type scenario, breaking it down using it the newish way, And then also understanding what is perimeter? How do you write down when you see more than? Okay, yes, more than is addition, but if you think is more than is the one that deals with inequalities, it's usually is greater than or is less than. But if there is no is and it says more than, that means addition, not the inequalities. Okay. All right. So that's all we have for today. So I will be on, hopefully on time, if I don't have too much of a problem. I'm trying to come on every Saturday at 1 p.m. And then if anything, the replays should be happening. If you are interested into my math notebook, this is called the Ultimate Math Notebook. You can basically purchase it through my funds. Sorry, through my Amazon. I was for a second, I was like, wait, can I say that word? Wait, yeah, I can't. I know on TikTok I can't say certain words. So I'm like paranoid now. Thanks, TikTok. Okay. The reason why I like this, it helps you keep yourself organized. It gives you a section for you to write down your formulas, like say for exponents, we were doing an activity on that. And I wrote the formulas for the exponents. So it'd be a quick reminder. Everything is in one spot, so you don't have to keep flipping pages. Okay. Same thing with a lot of things. Like this one, I did like, where's the algebra and geometry? We're working on complementary and supplementary and also straight line. So it gives you an idea to remind you. And then you can easily write down your steps. So like if we were combining, okay, subtracting, adding polynomials, I have like some of the steps that you can use, okay, to break a lot of those concepts down. So now you can see everything. You have a dot grid on one side, which is also really good for graphing. Okay, so you can graph your dots a little bit cleaner and you'll be able to understand it more. And then also the other side is just a traditional grid. And if you do have any practice problems that's like in a worksheet that's already been graded and you really like how it was designed, you can cut it and literally tape it into your book. So this will be a better way to keep track of your notes and everything could be right at your fingertips. And then, of course, in the back, if you ever forget some things, I have what's called a resource page. So with our resource page, if you're not strong with your factors, okay, if you're not strong with your multiplication facts, you need help with your factors, I have a factors chart. And most factors chart ends at 100, but my factors chart ends at 200. So if you have a child that's going into Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 and they need some assistance with their multiplication, this factor chart has been like a godsend to some students, okay? Then this is like for my advanced students where we have like the squares, the square roots, the cubes, and the cube roots all listed out. Then if you have people that are doing complex numbers, this is basically a book designed for my Algebra 2 and above and pre-calculus students. So then I also have the conversion charts. Sometimes kids forget about how to do fractions. So that happens at all levels. And then right here, hey, this looks familiar. So remember that more than, this is all the terminologies that's connected with each of the operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, equals, inequalities, as well as the rules of integers. Okay, all in color so you can see how the process is going on. Then we also have the properties of exponents. Then we have United States version of order of operations versus my international people, just so we can keep track. And then we have our linear and our quadratic equations. So there's like a lot of other things in here. It's also talked about inequalities, arithmetic and geometric sequences. The unit circle is in the one for the Algebra 2 kids. And then we have, okay, area, perimeter, volume, all of that. This looks familiar, but this one's for acceleration instead of distance, rate, and time. All right. So all of these things are listed just to have as a reminder. Okay, I do have some that with the basic form, but if you want to have like your own copy of it, you can. Okay, so if you go to the link in my stand store, I think right now the one that I have is the one that's for Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, but there is one for Algebra 2 and Calc students. Okay, so we have it all situated. Alrighty, so that's all I have for today. If you have any questions whatsoever, please do not hesitate to send me a message. You could probably just send me a direct message, or you can just put a comment in for the replay. All right, so have an amazing day, and I will see you next Saturday. Take care.